There's a huge amount of value in this whole phenomenon. But the problem with a lot of companies, a lot of projects, is that they're very focused on a very kind of incestuous and kind of exclusive relationship amongst the crypto community. And if they don't start building stuff that is for people that don't know, don't care about crypto, then it'll always be a niche play.
Welcome to the Students of Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Aaron, and I'm super excited about today's episode and sharing this conversation with you guys. I do want to note I have a little bit of a cold, so you're going to hear the sniffles. Please excuse that. But regardless, this conversation with Robin Lee went great. Robin Lee is the founder and CEO of HelloGold. I actually had the chance to meet Robin in person in late July at the ETHKL event in Kuala Lumpur. So I was really excited to actually get him on the show and ask him some questions where he shares his opinion on the space, but also really breaks down, what HelloGold is and shares his passion behind the project he's working on. Before I get started, I have three things I want to mention very quickly. And the first one is our website, studentsofcrypto.com. I post all of the information and resources from these conversations there. You can also find all of the other interviews along with some videos on our site. The second thing I want to mention is Twitter. Send me over a tweet. I'd love to hear some feedback from you at Crypto Students on Twitter, and I'll be looking forward to hearing from you. The third and last thing I want to mention is it really does help when you guys share this podcast. That's how this podcast works. Always really thankful for those who share it. Also the ones that review and smash that subscribe button. So make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you're listening so you can stay up to date on all the conversations I'm having and tag along for the journey. All right, that's all I have. Let's get started with this episode.
My name is Robin Lee. I'm the CEO and co-founder of HelloGold. Before I started HelloGold back in beginning of 2016 with my co-founder, Abdullah, I was previously the CFO of an organization called the World Gold Council, where I ran a $35 billion gold fund. It was the largest privately held gold fund in the world. I've been around the block quite a few times, and I have been previously a strategy consultant with the Boston Consulting Group, a capital markets regulator in Southeast Asia, and I was CFO of a listed company in the UK. I first wanted to do a financial inclusion project back in 1998 during the Asian financial crisis, and I saw how bad things happen to good people. And typically the ones that are most at risk are the folks that are least able to protect themselves with financial products and services. And I always had in mind the idea to try and find a platform by which I could help mitigate that risk for future crises. And in 2010, when I joined the World Gold Council, I realized that gold was potentially a key ingredient to that ambition of mine. And so in 2015, I decided that I would leave my job and start HelloGold. And 2016, we started building it. We went into beta at the end of 2016. We went to alpha at the end of 2016. We went to beta at the beginning of 2017, and we had our full launch in April last year in Malaysia. And 15 months later, we're about 25,000 customers that we've onboarded. And we're making strides to expand our product into other markets. And when we're starting with Thailand and the Middle East, with ambitions to go into Indonesia sometime next year, as well as the Philippines and other parts of the Middle East. What's important about HelloGold is that we're a financial services play that is focused on serving the folks that are typically seen as underserved by the financial markets or unbanked. And we are purely focused on emerging market economies. So you won't be seeing us anytime soon in Western Europe or North America, because people there have a smorgasbord of financial products and services that can cater to them. Whereas for a lot of people in the emerging markets, they just don't have the products that they need to get out of whatever vicious cycle they happen to be in.
What is your one-liner to describe HelloGold?
Yes, effectively, we are a fintech business that focuses on the underserved and the unbanked in emerging markets. We are in the business of creating financial products that they can affordably access, and also, most important of all, be useful to them. So our launch asset class is gold, because most folks in emerging markets understand gold. Gold enables them to save better because gold typically increases around the rate of local inflation. We can also use that same gold that they save with to enable them to get loans by collateralizing the gold that they have. But we're going to be much, much more than that. We plan to launch a money market fund, but we need a license for that. So we're in the process of applying for a license in Malaysia. And we want to provide other products that they can't typically get from the traditional financial services providers. So we're looking at things that will impact their daily lives. For example, petrol. One of the things we're working around internally is the viability of a petrol-backed savings product.
Wow, yeah, that's really exciting to hear your vision on how you guys are going to expand outside of just gold. I'm really excited to see how that goes for you guys the next couple of years. Can you tell me more about the frictions and challenges you're finding as you continue to target these emerging markets and expand your guys' company?
Well, in terms of accessibility, there isn't any real problem because most people in emerging markets, no matter how rich or poor they are, have access to a smartphone. So long as they have access to a smartphone, they'll have access to our mobile app. That said, one of the key issues that any new entrant into a market will face is brand awareness. So for HelloGold, our key strategy is to partner up with existing brands that the local community will know. So typically we plan to partner up with mobile operators because everyone has to use their smartphone through a mobile operator. And by doing that, we're able to overcome the lack of brand equity or brand awareness that we or in fact, any startup would face going into a country like, say, Indonesia, Thailand, Laos, Myanmar, etc. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is also obviously also working with government and regulators, because we want to make sure that we are able to provide products that the governments of the day are comfortable with in giving the people that they look after. So these are the two things. One is brand awareness, which we mitigate through working with big on-the-ground consumer-facing companies, and the other is working with public agencies to make sure that we're able to deliver the right kind of products that they believe their people need.
Strategically, I think that's really interesting for you guys to target those mobile operators that your potential customers are familiar with. I think that's definitely something I'm curious about following and seeing how that goes for you. But in the meantime, I do want to switch it up just a little bit and talk to you more about your opinions on ICOs. What are your thoughts right now on ICOs?
Well, I think the ICO phenomenon, which is relatively recent, it's about 2 to 3 years old, you've seen a lot of changes. From right at the start, it was basically protocol level utility type projects like Ethereum and other types of platforms. That was one aspect. Then over the course of the back end of 2015 and through 2016, you saw a lot of blockchain-based companies like ourselves, HelloGold, where we were creating tokens to avail ourselves either to build out network, build up brand awareness, or to fundraise for our projects. And now what you're seeing, at least in Asia, are a number of companies that are reverse engineering their business model and putting some blockchain part to it, effectively, I guess, to fundraise. What I see happening moving forward is this idea of security token offerings, whereby companies will have 3 ways of raising funds. Debt, equity, the traditional way, and also through tokenization. I think this is particularly important in emerging markets where the capital markets are very, very shallow or not very well developed, and the ability to raise significant funds for startups in, say, Myanmar or Guatemala are unable to get to critical mass because they just don't have access to kind of the investor pools that you see in North America, in China, and Western Europe. And tokenization will enable them to get their projects off the ground. So I'm very excited about the potential what ICO can do for entrepreneurial startups. On the flip side, from the investor standpoint, notwithstanding the way that people look at these things today and the noise about shooting the moon and when mooning, more fundamentally, you now have a very financially inclusive instrument. oftentimes, a lot of people would have loved to have invested in Google when it's just an idea, or Alibaba when it's just an idea. But unless they knew the founders or they were an LP and a VC, they would have had the chance to get an exposure into those great projects. Now with tokenization, suddenly literally anyone, anywhere around the world with, whatever the minimum transaction size is, say $100, can potentially invest in the next big thing when it's just an idea. And I think that's hugely powerful from a financial inclusion standpoint.
Yeah, it seems like the ICO market is the Wild West, to say the least. Now, I do want to ask you about your thoughts on Bitcoin being the new gold. You seem to be the type of guy that may know a thing or two about gold. So what are your thoughts on, that statement of Bitcoin being the new gold?
Okay, so the argument whether Bitcoin is the new gold, everyone kind of knows, right? There are a lot of attributes in both Bitcoin and gold that are kind of identical in theory. I think that there are a couple of challenges for Bitcoin that Bitcoin needs to overcome before it can become the new gold. And there are kind of two things. One is to become a store of wealth. And the other is to get acceptance beyond the very small community that exists today. So notionally, I've estimated the total universe of crypto investors to be about 15 million people. There are about, more than 4 billion people around the world. Of that 4 billion, I would say 90% of them will have an inherent understanding of gold. So the challenge for Bitcoin is to get to a place where, the vast majority of people in the world understand what a Bitcoin is and understands how to get access to that. And I think we're some ways from that. The second thing is that gold has a very unique characteristic. It's seen as a safe haven asset. And if you look at financial theory, a safe haven asset by its very, very nature is a low risk, low return. US Treasuries being another good example. Whereas a high return asset is typically high risk because of the volatility, which is where Bitcoin is. So for Bitcoin to become a store of value and to be a safe haven asset, it basically has to get to a place where it's not growing that by more than 2-3% per annum. And then it becomes a low risk, low return asset. Can it get to that place? Absolutely. Is it there yet? No. But there is a journey that it'll have to go through, both in terms of acceptance by a much wider market than just the crypto community, and it has to start to become effectively boring as an instrument. Then it can be the new gold.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it has to become boring before it's the new gold. That's funny. Now, what are your thoughts on stablecoins? How do you see, your guys' platform, benefiting from stablecoins, or maybe, just the space in general?
So HelloGold, although we use blockchain and we tokenize our underlying assets, we're very much focused on the mass market, the man in the street, who doesn't necessarily have a crypto wallet, doesn't really understand Bitcoin, and certainly has no inkling of what tokenization looks like. So for us, we use the technology in a way that's invisible to our users. That said, given our strategy where we have boots on the ground in every market we go into, it will take us a while to be truly global. And for that reason, we've created a kind of a branded token product, a tokenized gold product called GoldX, with the intention that could potentially be used by people outside our immediate markets that we go into. And there are a number of other projects that provide tokenized real assets that aspire to be stable coins, whether it's Tether, etc., and other precious metal type gold coins out there. What's really interesting is that I started the year thinking that the world needed a stable coin. I'm now at a place where I'm not sure that institutional investors need a stable coin, and nor do I think retail investors need a stable coin. And I'll talk you through the reasons why I think that my views have changed. If we look at the retail investor first, the retail investor invests in crypto, typically invests in crypto with the expectation of high risk, high return. To the extent that they want a diversified portfolio and they want a low risk, low return asset like a stable coin, they have access to that without accessing the tokenized wealth. If they want US dollar, they just buy US Treasury tips. or they can buy underlying physical from traditional bullion dealers or traditional financial service providers. They don't need a tokenized product to do that. Then the question is, why would you want a tokenized product? Then when you look at institutional investors, most of these institutional investors, to the extent that they've had a previous track record before they raised a crypto fund, will know that there are deep liquidity pools for stable assets like gold. For example, the fund that I used to work with before I started HelloGold is a $35 billion fund with gold as the underlying asset. And you can move in and out literally millions of dollars without moving the market. So for these guys, if they wanted a stable coin, so to speak, or an asset that has stable features, they can move into that. And so they don't need to use a stable coin. If we were to create a stable coin for an institutional investor, the first question they're going to ask is, what's the cost of the round trip? And the second thing they ask is, how much liquidity do you have? Because as an institutional investor, you need to know that you can get in and out of the position as quickly as you can. So I'm not sure at this point in time where a stable coin will fit into the ecosystem. Now, as the market matures, I see a role for a stable coin, but I don't think we're there yet.
I know you're extremely insightful in the industry, so I do appreciate you sharing your opinion on those topics, because I think, those are a couple of the things that are really, popular right now in conversations in this space. I do want to backtrack just a little bit and talk to you more about the first time you thought of HelloGold in terms of as a solution, and maybe how you got started building it.
Well, like I said, the light bulb came on while I was still at the World Gold Council. It was back in about 2013, and we basically launched we had launched about 24 months previously a product for ICBC, the world's largest bank in China, and it was a bricks and mortar version of what HelloGold is, and it enabled people to buy gold at fractional levels, and it just took off. It grew to basically a $6 billion a year business within 4 years, and that was the moment, coupled with the much larger gold fund, which was targeted at the rich, the ETF fund that was targeted at the rich in North America and Western Europe. And I saw how both these things could be brought together using technology to provide similar products and services for the man in the street in other emerging markets. And so, in 2015, I took the plunge. I spent most of 2015 trying to figure out whether I had the courage to do a startup. And in 2016, I launched with my co-founder, Ridwan. And the first 12 months was hard work because we were building the product, getting it to market, and getting it in a position where we could do an ICO to basically promote the project. So we were unusual compared to a lot of other projects in those days because we had a working product with a partnership with customers before we did our ICO. And after the ICO completed, we ramped up our team from the 10 to 15 people we had to the 50 that we now have. And we are now in expansion mode. So we've moved from startup to ramp up.
Yeah, first off, congratulations. What a journey. Now, I want to talk more about current events. Is there a specific event that you're following extremely closely because of its significance to what you guys are doing at HelloGold?
I think the whole host of things that are happening. The ambition to run a crypto-based ETF, I think, and the regulators taking a view of it in the US, and the delay in starting that. The ongoing regulation in this space, I think, is a very interesting thing, and seeing how that evolves, because depending on how that takes shape, it will either bring this phenomenon to a whole different level, or it will kind of kill it. My own personal view is that regulators will take a rational perspective for this and remove the emotion from the discussion and see the value that this phenomenon has brought to the table. And I think generally I'm very optimistic about the kind of news that I see today, notwithstanding some of the bad stuff that's happening in the press, with regards to hacks and stolen wallets, etc.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that statement. I do agree with, the importance of removing the emotional response in these discussions about this technology, because otherwise, you overlook the actual value that, this technology can provide. Before we go, I do want to ask if there's anything you'd like the audience to know about HelloGold in terms of where to find more information, or maybe just some last words that you may have for our audience.
Yeah, so you can, the HelloGold token site is hellogold.org. The customer-facing side is hellogold.com. So the hellogold.org is more focused on the token market. So people that want to buy into the HelloGold token or want to understand more about the project, our white paper from last year's ICO is there. We did a very different ICO from a lot of people. We structured it in a way that required us to do 3 different tranches. So we only did our first tranche last year. We are now prepping to do a second tranche, but we may delay that because the environment's not right. Market sentiment is pretty weak. Token isn't performing half as well as it should. So we need to fix those things before we launch our second tranche sale of the token. But yes, you can see everything and read up about us in hellogold.org. This space is very exciting. The only thing is the caveat that I tell everyone generally is that all token projects are startups. Most startups fail. So, do due diligence to make sure you have all the right answers that you need before you invest. Otherwise, you're not investing, you're just gambling.
And that's it for today's conversation with Robin Lee. I do appreciate Robin for taking time to have a conversation today. I learned a ton about what they're working on at HelloGold, but also just about the space. And I think it's really important that we had a discussion about his opinion and his insights on different topics that are currently popular. It's definitely helping me ask better questions and explore the space. I hope you as the audience also gain some value. Now, before I do go, I just want to plug a couple different places for you guys to stay in touch and get in touch if you would like. That first one being our website, the studentsofcrypto.com. The second space is Telegram. Head on over to Telegram and search for Students of Crypto, and you'll find our group. I'd love to hear from you there about the things you're looking into, maybe some questions you have. And you can always find us on Twitter at Crypto Students. And I look forward to having you back listening to our show in the next episode. So make sure you review and share this conversation so that we can continue to do shows and grow our channel.